Hi, this is Terry with the Southwest Chapter Trout Unlimited of Madison, Wisconsin. We're here at Cabela's in some Prairie, just outside of Madison. And tonight we're going to do Parachute Hopper. And there are a lot of steps to this pattern, but the pattern really lasts a long time, and I think it looks pretty good. Catches fish. So what I have in the vise is a size 8 nymph hook. Now my pattern, I use a hackle to put some wraps around it. I'm going to use some ribbing, and tonight I'm just going to use Crystal Flash. It's cheap, it's real strong, it's going to give it a little flash as it goes in the water on it. You can also use copper wire or something like that, but tonight I'm using Crystal Flash. And we'll get that on real well. Right back to our hook. The next thing I want to do is put on my hackle. I'm going to palm it around the body, and I want it so that it's somewhere around when it comes off about the length of the width of the gap, or maybe a little bit more. So that's pretty good. And I'm going to take the bigger part off because I don't want that fluffy end that came out of the bird. I'm going to strip a few barb reels off like that for a tying post. And if I can, I'm going to put the top of the feather towards me and tie that in. And the reason I do that is as I wrap it around, the barb reels will point a little bit backwards, but they're pointing forwards. It's not a huge thing. Then I like to come forward to about the quarter mark. And here I'm going to make my parachute post. And you can use a lot of different things. Standard or kip tail or calf tail or something like that. Turkey tea-based feathers are real nice, but tonight I'm just going to use some Antron yarn. And what I did was just took a section off of the cardboard, put it on about in the middle, right on top of the hook, 3, 4, or 5 wraps like so. Okay. Then I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to post it. And posting means that you're going to go above the hook to get that yarn together. So it looks like one unit of post. And I don't have to go up real high with this. And what I like to do is go around the back softly and then snug it up as I come to the front. And I'm going to work my way around a little bit. That's maybe about as high as I need to go. And now I'm going to work my way down because I want some thread on this, on the base. And when I get towards the bottom, I'm satisfied that my post is set up pretty well. I like to do a couple figure 8s around it just to kind of help hold it in. And what I'm going to do with this then is take a little bit of super glue, very, very little. And I'm going to put a little bit on the thread part itself. And the reason I do this is just to stiffen up that post when I do my parachute. Then I go back to my tie-in point at the back. And tonight I'm just going to use some dry fly dubbing, and this for the body I'm going to want a pretty good sized chunk of it. And I get my ends all kind of matted in there so they're not straggling everywhere. Maybe a hunk about that size. Get enough thread out and start dubbing my dry fly dubbing on. I'm going to want this body dubbed right up to the post. And then secure it off a little bit like so. Okay? Then I'm going to take my ribbing, whatever that's going to be, and I counter wrap around it, the body, and bring it forward. And I'm trying to leave a space of about maybe 1/8 of an inch or something like that. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to bring my hackle right up in between that, so I need a little bit of room for the hackle. And then I can tie this off. Now I'm going to take my hackle and I'm going to counter wrap that. Right in between the ribbing. And once you get up in this area, we're going to cover this up with the wing and stuff, so it doesn't have to be maybe as neat as when you first started it. I'm going to take some of these hairs off on the top, these barbules. I'm not going to put it right down to the body, but I'm going to take some of those off because my wing's going to go over them. And if you leave too long, it'll poke the wing up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm ready to put my wing on. So what I'm going to do is come in and take a section of that, kind of along the feathers themselves, the way the parts of the feather run. So I don't cut it straight across. I'm going to cut it at an angle to follow that feather line, something like this. The tape is going to be on the bottom side, and what I want to do is just look at it real quick and see if I cut it too wide. Because if I tied it in like that, this part's going to wrap around the body, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to take a brief second and take off about 3 of those little sections of feather, angling up towards the tip. And I'm going to do that on both sides, so that's much better. It's not going to wrap around very well. Square off the end, and you can either wrap it on this way, or what I like to do is bend this in half so that the tape's on the inside, and I'm going to make a little notch in this. And I'm going to go down by the bottom of the bend and angle it up a little bit, maybe something over 45 degrees. And the idea of this is to help in the wrapping right around the post. So now I have a little notch here, and that's going to go around the post. I can tie it in real well. The next thing I need to do is figure out how long I want my wing to be. So probably right about in there. Again, I fold it in half, go where I want my wing to be. Instead of cutting it this way to make the V, I'm going to cut it the other way. And if I'm lucky, I can twist it a little bit as I'm cutting, which will give me something of a round feather at the back. So now I'm going to bring that up right tight against the post. So now we've got our body, we've got our hackle on, we've got our ribbing on. Our wing is plenty long enough. It could be a little shorter, but it's going to work fine. And that's done. The next thing I'm going to do is put my legs in. And I make my legs out of hackle using some of the stiffer part, and trim off the barbules, loop it, make a little knot, something like that. I'm going to go back maybe about where the end of the body goes. 2 or 3 good wraps there, 2 or 3 good wraps around it, and then I can position it so that it sticks up a little bit like so. And then I made a second leg the same way, and this one I'm just going to turn around to get the bow to go the other way. I'm going to try to match up those joints a little bit so they're fairly equal. Secure it around the hook with some wraps. And now what I like to do with these is to take a little bit of super glue and just touch them where I wrap the legs in. Don't need a lot, just a little touch. And as we're working, that's going to harden up and help those legs stay in place. The next thing I'm going to do is put on my parachute. And I'm just going to use some hackle. I already picked out a feather I think will work pretty well. And I'm looking for this bottom half or so. And just take that top part off. And with the feather top facing me, I'm going to wrap that in a little bit. Now I still have to make my head, so I want this parachute part out of the way. So I'm just going to wrap it up the post 1 or 2 times, just to make sure it's not going to bug me here later on. And I got caught in the barbels. There we go. And bring my thread down. Okay. Now I'm going to make my head. And I'm just going to use the same dry fly dubbing, in this case Cabela's. I don't want a lot. This is going to be plenty, maybe even too much, because I want this thinner so I can control it a little bit and make my head the size I want. So I'm going to dub that on, and then I start bringing it around to make my head. And this is where a rotary vise comes in handy, because now I can come back and come down and see, am I covering everything up that I want covered. Okay, so I make it a couple of wraps around. Then I want to bring it in the middle to cover all that stuff up and bring it around. For time-wise, well, let's go ahead and make that a little bigger. That's a little bit small. I want my head a little bit prominent, because if you ever look at a hopper head, they've got pretty prominent heads. I'm just going to work it around and try to make it nice and even as possible. So I have a little head going there. Now I'm going to do my parachute, and what I do with that is just wrap it around with the next wrap going below the preceding wrap. And once you get towards the bottom, that'll push the other wraps up a little bit. And I'm going to go around however many times I think my feather will last me and still give me something to hold on to. Okay, so we're going to wrap this around the parachute itself to tie it off. And I'm going to carefully come around here, trying not to trap barbules, maybe a couple of times. And I like to go under it once to make sure it's just trapped on the top and the bottom. Okay, snug that up a little bit. And we're right towards the end. Now I'm going to whip finish this. Now one thing I do, so I don't trap these barbules and ruin the parachute, you can use a half hitch tool, or I just use a whip finisher and create some half hitches. And I go under, pick it up, so I don't catch any of those splayed out parachute barbules. 3-4 times, whatever you want to do. Take my thread off. I can cut my parachute down. I use the general rule of the width of my finger. So I go in there just like your barber cuts your hair. And there I've got a pretty good little post going on. Now I can look back at my legs, and I bring them both together. You can do them separately if you want. Take off what you think you want to take off to finish your leg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my knot. I'm going to put some head cement on these knees or knuckles, and if you want, you can drip some in the parachute part. But that's a basic parachute hopper.